Choir of One has quickly become one of my favorite exotics in Destiny 2, and it's proven to be one of the best exotics we've ever gotten. So I made a Void Hunter build that allows for an aggressive playstyle with infinite volatile rounds, healing, invisibility, and some insane damage capabilities. FYI, all of my builds are Grandmaster difficulty approved, meaning they'll also be good in anything from seasonal activities to raids to exotic missions and basically everything else. And they don't rely on artifact mods. So, if you're ready, let's take a look at one of my favorite builds of all time. First, we need to know our two exotics, Choir of One and your Falcon's Hauberk. Choir of One is our weapon of choice, and this special ammo auto rifle will allow us to take care of enemies that are really far away while we're aiming down sights, and deal big damage to close or large enemies while we're hip firing. We essentially want to use this weapon as our primary. Most of the time, you want to take out weaker targets and groups of enemies while aiming, and beefier enemies like champions, bosses, and mini bosses while hip firing. It's also really good against tormentors while aiming. I think the best catalyst perk will be subsistence if we're not taking into account artifact mods, but onslaught will be interesting to test out in the future. With subsistence, you basically never have to reload if you're killing enemies efficiently. The trait Fanatical Lance states that rapid final blows cause targets to explode into a pool of radiolaria. It also describes the hip fire projectiles. These explosions of radiolaria turn Choir into a great tool for clearing ads, but our next exotic makes it even better at that. Your Falcon's Hauberk's trait, See Me, Feel Me, states your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from invisibility. This is the main thing we'll be taking away from this exotic. This will give our Choir of One volatile rounds, allowing it to create a ton of explosions, and break barrier shields while active. The second part of this trait states that while you are invisible and defeat a combatant when using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage. You and your nearby allies gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using our dodge. The void overshield and 35% damage buff from the second part of the trait is really nice, but it's mostly secondary to the build, so I treat it as a nice bonus if I happen to make it work. So volatile rounds will be amazing to have on Choir of One, but we need to emerge from invisibility in order to gain the volatile rounds. How can we go invisible, and how can we turn these two exotics into an infinite cycle of volatile and invisibility? Let's find out in our subclass. We're going to be on Void Hunter, and Stylish Executioner is the most crucial component to making this build work. Defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a stylish execution, your next melee attack while invisible weakens targets, and they deal a lot more damage. This second part is not our main focus with this aspect, just a neat bonus, much like with the overshield from your Falcon. So we can become invisible by defeating volatile targets. Since our Choir of One makes targets volatile with volatile rounds, when we kill them, we become invisible thanks to Stylish Executioner. After we get out of that invisibility, we regain volatile rounds thanks to your Falcons. That is the gameplay loop of this build, but we still need a way to initially become invisible to start it off. This can be done through many ways. Our second aspect, Trapper's Ambush, lets us use our smoke bomb to dive to the ground and make us and teammates invisible, while also weakening enemies. Our throwable smoke also has these properties. Remember, thanks to Stylish Executioner, defeating any weakened targets will also make us invisible. We'll use Vortex Grenade just because I think it's the best grenade. Snare Bomb is our only choice for melee, and then Gambler's Dodge will allow us to get our smoke bomb back when we dodge near an enemy. Our super will be Deadfall Tether just so we can lock down rooms and groups of enemies while also being able to apply that strong weaken debuff. Time for the Fragments, which will really enhance this build. Echo of Undermining will make our Vortex Grenade cause weakening, meaning if we kill a target hit by the grenade, we'll become invisible. Echo of Starvation is a game changer since picking up Void Breaches or an Orb of Power grants Devour. We're not making any Void Breaches with this build, but we will be making a ton of orbs for ourselves thanks to armor mods we'll talk about later. Remember, the timer for Devour will be refreshed if you get kills while it's active, so you really want to play aggressive. Echo of Persistence makes our Devour and Void Overshields last 50% longer, and our invisibility last 40% longer. A very helpful fragment for this build. Echo of Obscurity, which grants us invisibility whenever we finish an enemy. Unfortunately, this will not activate the damage boost or reserve overshield for your Falcons if you're not invisible when you start the finisher, but it will be a surefire source of on-demand invisibility. And with that, we have 3 ways to become invisible initially, which will then let us begin the volatile invis cycle with Choir of of 1, and your falcons. Now, let's talk armor mods, and I'll go over the ones that I think relate to the function of the build most, and then I'll fill in the other ones on screen. First though, your stats should always be 100 resilience, and then focus on mobility and discipline equally for this build. Our cloak has some of the most important armor mods, Reaper and Powerful Attraction. Reaper makes it so that when we dodge, our next weapon kill generates an orb. Powerful Attraction makes it so that when we dodge, any nearby orbs are instantly collected. These are two mods that I practically run in every build that I use. The third mod here is Special Finisher, and that's because you really can eat through ammo with the hipfire mode on Choir of 1, so why not have an option to generate our own special ammo on the fly? This will require and consume 3 armor charges. Thankfully on our boots, we run stacks on stacks, so picking up 1 orb grants us 2 armor charges. Now, normally I would run Recuperation on the legs, but Devour already heals us when we pick up orbs, so we can instead run 1 Void Scavenger for more Choir ammo, and then a Void Weapon Surge for 10% more damage for our Void weapons. Onto the arms, I recommend Firepower, so grenade kills make an orb. And then Impact Induction, so hitting enemies with our smoke grants grenade energy. And finally, Bolstering Detonation, so that we get dodge energy whenever we deal damage with our Vortex grenades. On the helmet, run 1 Void Siphon mod, so our Choir of 1 multi-kills will generate orbs of power. Finally, on the chest piece, Void Reserves grants a good bit of ammo to choirs, so I like to run it, and it'll be especially helpful when the total reserves get decreased down the line. And those are the armor mods, and of course, run ammo finders on the helmet and resist mods depending on the activity. We'll cover artifact mods last just because you might as well run them this season, but once again, my gameplay does not use any artifact mods. Our legendary weapons in the first slot can really be whatever you want. I think running double special now is viable due to how much ammo Choir of 1 has, but when that gets nerfed, I don't think it'll be a good idea to run that setup. So primaries like Aisha's Care, Imminence, Bold Endings, or maybe whatever weapon you need to deal with a specific champion will be best to pair with Choir of 1 in my opinion. Now, as for the heavy weapon, Edge Transit is just so good for everything right now, and it's a great complement to the Choir of 1. I like to run Envious Assassin and then Explosive Light for GMs and Bait and Switch for boss encounters. But in general, Void heavy weapons would be ideal since they'll also gain volatile rounds thanks to the build and thus can break barrier shields, allow you to become invisible, and benefit from our armor mods. If you're running this build this season, you might as well run the best artifact mods. Targeting Autoloader and Sustained Fire are really good of course, so throw them on. For Void related mods, Void Hegemony and Expanding Abyss will certainly come in handy with this build, and if you run Elemental Siphon, then you'll be able to make Void breaches with kills from Choir of 1, just further increasing the potency of this build. Now, you could choose to run Overload Auto Rifle, but then you wouldn't be able to shoot through barrier shields or any other enemy shields that anti-barrier lets you shoot through while you have volatile rounds. I personally do not run Overload Auto Rifle even if there are Overload champs, and instead rely on my primary weapon to deal with overloads. And that is everything about the inner workings of the build covered. I'll always end these videos with how these builds work in practice, so let's do it. Step 1. Become invisible. Either get a finisher kill, use your smoke bomb or activate quickfall, or defeat an enemy that is weakened from your smoke or grenade. Coming out of this invisibility will grant volatile rounds, thus beginning our gameplay cycle. Step 2. Gain Devour by picking up an orb. Either get a kill with your grenade, get a double kill with the Void weapon, or dodge to proc Reaper, then get a kill with your weapon. Devour will help us play much more aggressively since every kill will heal us. Step 3. Keep the cycle going. Use your Choir of 1, use your abilities, and keep getting kills against volatile and weakened enemies to continuously enter invisibility, in turn resetting your volatile rounds on Choir of 1. Now, of course, you don't have to follow all of those steps that I mentioned 100% of the time. These are just some things that you can use and think about while you're mastering the build. In Grandmaster content, once you have volatile rounds, the first headshot while aiming with Choir of 1 will apply volatile and should make an enemy one shot. The second headshot on the enemy should kill them and make you invisible. That's just one of those things that I like to think about when using the build, just so that it's more consistent and I have a rhythm when I'm in gameplay. If you want, try to finish enemies while invisible to get that reserve overshield for everyone and a 35% weapon damage buff for yourself. And that is the full gameplay loop. With everything mentioned in those steps and all the extra bonuses we get from our subclass, armor mods, and potentially artifact mods, this build is truly one of the best and most fulfilling hunter builds I've ever used. Once you get good with it, it can easily take you through solo Grandmaster content. It's just so consistent and satisfying seeing all those explosions while also knowing you'll be safe after you get a kill thanks to the healing and invis. I hope you all enjoy the build, and most importantly, I hope you all will have fun with it. And with that being said, have a good day.